Hi, I'm KS Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerd Podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with writer, creator, and fellow podcaster Barney Smith, here to promote the second installment of his dad joke series, Dadder Jokes, now live on Kickstarter. Welcome, Barney.
Hey, S. Garner, thank you for having me. And this is exciting because before we went live, I was talking about how it was about a year or so ago you were on my show,
Yeah.
and now it's because we're talking about some of your work, and now it's now the shoe's on the other foot, or the is that the right
Yeah, the shoes are on the
phrase?
foot. Yeah, the shoes are on the
Shoes on the
foot,
other foot,
the
or
tables
something
have
like that.
turned, that type of thing.
Yeah. Something to do with shoes and tables. I don't know, something, yeah, some kind of household object is some we're referred to it for this moment, I guess.
But thank you for joining us, by the way. But outside of my introduction, who is Barney Smith in his own words?
Okay, so I'll use English words. So I'm going to use the words that other people use, but um that was a joke. Oh, is this thing on? Okay. No, it's really fun because I don't talk about myself on my podcast. I'm really excited to talk about myself and when being a guest. So basically, a long story short, KS is that I'll give you the abbreviated version of my life. So I ended up, I graduated from art school in 1998. My goal was to be a children's book illustrator. That was kind of like my dream, to be a children's book illustrator. And so what I ended up doing is I did what any art school person, like anybody who graduates from art school, does in 1998, in the height of the internet bubble. I mean, obviously, I joined the Peace Corps. That's usually what any art student does in 1998. So I joined the Peace Corps. I was in Niger in West Africa for about 4 years. Usually the run is about 2 years. You're supposed to do a Peace Corps. You're supposed to do Peace Corps for about 2 years, but I ended up, I ended up but after 2 years, you end up learning the local language. You ended up understanding the culture. And then my point was like, why would you leave after when you finally starting to get to understand what's going on? So I extended for 2 more years. So I was there for 4 years, and then after that, I went off and got a graduate degree in international education, and still had the bug of working overseas. So then I ended up working for international relief organizations, one of them being Doctors Without Borders for a few years. So chronologically speaking, I was in Pakistan after the earthquake. I was in, and then I was in Philippines after doing typhoon relief work, and then I was in South Sudan during their independence. Then I was in Zimbabwe during the cholera outbreak, and then I was in Uganda working at an HIV clinic. And then I was in Libya during the revolution. I was repairing ambulances and getting shot at. And then after that, the last place I was in, I was working in an urban maternity healthcare clinic in Lagos in Nigeria. And that's where I met my wife there. So one of the things about I love, it's like the 90 Day Fiance. The whole thing about 90 Day Fiance is like, it's just like I always laugh at that because my wife and I dated for 30 days before we got married because it's the generic story, KS. Everybody's heard it a million times about the slightly overweight Vermont cartoonist marries a Nigerian runway model. I mean, it's the generic story. People have heard it a million times. And fast forward, we've been married now for 11 years. We got 3 kids, and I always tell people is like everybody's relationships are different and unique. And I would say that our relationship is it's like that line from Who Framed Roger Rabbit where it was like, why are you with him? And she said, he makes me laugh. You know, beauty fades, KS, intelligence gets stagnant, but humor is what keeps a relationship alive. And as long as I make her laugh, because I married up. Like, I mean, when you see us walking together, people know why I married her, but people look at her like, why did you, like, they look at her like, why did you marry him? Like, people are always confused when they see us walking together. And yeah, it's been a joy for the last 11 years. And that's in totality. Like I said, we have 3 kids now. We got a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old, 2 girls and a boy. And all of that is in total is based off of really I'm publishing my 5th graphic novel right now. So the first 4 are kind of in response to the chronology that I just kind of gave, where the first book I created, it was about a 260 plus page graphic novel called 2 Years, which was basically kind of a sci-fi memoir of a way of my work in the Peace Corps. Then I came out with a book called Relief, which was a sequel to 2 Years, which was about my work working overseas and relief work. But I made it in like a science fiction setting. And then I came out with a 3rd graphic novel that was called Lion and Dove, which is about the intercultural the continuing intercultural saga of intercultural marriage, which has been completely divine. And then of course with kids, I came out with my book on dad jokes, which now I'm doing a sequel called Dadder Jokes. And obviously, it's obvious, it's pretty clear to everyone, if those with the acumen of understanding languages, that obviously there's going to be a 3rd book called Daddest Jokes. So that's obviously going to happen. So that is basically, KS is my life within the last 25 years is basically what I just summed up my life in 25 years in like 3 minutes. KS. Mm-hmm. How did that happen? Look at that. See? Yeah.
You're probably so used to just talking about it, right? I mean, no one else has ever asked about your life. Like, hey, what's your life been like?
Yeah. See, I know. See, it's like, it's pretty interesting. And like the idea of like the impetus of the dad joke book is that, if we look back and I, take a journey with me, KS, we're going to go back 3 years to the year 2020. So as everybody recalls, 2020 was a pretty hard year. It was a pretty hard year. We had issues with COVID-19. We had issues with, we were going through an election period. We had, the George Floyd murder. There was so much happening that just really made the world, in the United States, it was a difficult time to be around, and it was difficult, and emotions were high, and it was so easy. You could accidentally get into a fight on the internet. At least nowadays, I give credit to the point of like social media in the sense that you actually had, now if you get somebody's like says something, you can just like block them, good, and now like your social media, you can make your social media feed curated enough where you don't have to find, you don't have to like see people that have opposing viewpoints with you anymore. It's pretty easy to start blocking. But back in 2020, if you saw something and you wanted to block it, you had to right click on the image and hit block, and it comes across, did you talk to the person first? Did you do this? No, I just don't want to see this. Like, it was just, you could end up just getting in fights by accident. Like, example, you could post a picture of a beautiful sunset, and then you could say, here's a beautiful sunset here, and then someone would respond who you're not even friends with, because they just happened based off of your share settings that were by default, would be someone and says, sunsets are caused by air pollution. If you like sunsets, you like air pollution. I'm like, no, that's not what I said. I just thought the colors were nice, or like you could post, well, what a beautiful puppy. Puppies come from puppy mills. If you don't support animal shelters, then you kill dogs. I'm like, no, that's not what I said at all. Like, it was so easy to accidentally get in fights. It was so easy. So what I did, KS, is like on my own little corner of the internet, I decided to be very proactive and just get some humor and just get something together. Just made people smile. So every couple of weeks or so pre-2020, I would post like a dad joke or something witty but I said, you know what? No, I'm just going to do it. So all the low-hanging fruits. So what I did was basically all the low-hanging fruits that I was able to publish, like, what do you call a hippie's wife? Mrs. Hippie. Don't throw sodium chloride at people. That's assault. It's like these are the ones that, like, it was an emotional wedding. Even the cake was in tears, TEIR. So these were the ones that were just.
Do you come up with these jokes, or is it just like some that you hear and you just repeat them?
So some of them I curated, like what are two janitors who live together called? Broommates. Like, see, that's so I was feeling a bit paranoid. Just remember, you are not alone. These are some. So, it's what do you call an alligator with a vest on? An investigator. Like that one. So I hate autocorrect. It always makes me say things I did not Nintendo. So what I did is, what I really kind of grabbed those low hanging fruits, the ones that were just kind of easy. You saw floating around, on the internet pretty easy. And fast forward, I've been doing this now, KS, for almost 4 years, and every single day I post something new. So I've been able to keep those curated. And so one of the things somebody asked me back in 2021 or early 2022, they said, it'd be nice if you actually had these all in one place. I'm like, well, I mean, you can just scroll them through my Facebook feed, but it's public, but nobody knows how to find that really, unless you actually are looking for it. So I decided to, as a cartoonist, and as I said, previously publishing books before in the past, I know how to do it. So I was able to create dad jokes. You can get dad jokes in it. Like, you can go to Amazon, you can go to your bookstore. Case, you can walk down your bookstore right now and find a joke section, and there's probably some books called dad jokes. The thing about my book that's different is there's 4 things that make this book different. Number one is it's the only one I've ever noticed is actually fully colored. Every page is fully colored. The second thing about this book is I have as I say, I got 3 kids, 9-year-old and 7-year-old are my daughters. And we have a rule in this house. There's no such thing as gender specific chores. Every chore is for anybody to do. So for instance, I do the laundry. So every page has something that somebody's dad could be doing. So like I have, mowing a lawn. I got laundry because I do laundry in the house. You got fishing, you got a football, like there's all these kind of things. I do the dishes. So you got the dishwasher, he dishes, and I got corn. Like, I'm sure some people have dads that are farmers. There's a broom. We clean, and then there's campfire in case people want to go camping. So there's always, every page has something that is something that somebody's dad could be doing. The other thing about this book is if you buy any joke book, anything that say, and this is the guarantee that I can give with my books, this one and also the sequel book, Dadder Jokes, is that invariably, and every joke book that I've actually stumbled upon or looked at will end up having some joke that might be a misogynistic or a bit racist or something in there that would actually make fun of somebody's intellectual capacity, might make fun of somebody's disability, might make fun of an entire cultural group. So, and my book here is 100% safe. There's nothing in there that's actually offensive. There's nothing in there that actually demeans or degrades anybody on there, because when it comes down to telling jokes, humor should be the unifying factor to bring everybody together, and it should not be at the expense of making somebody feel as though they're an other by making fun of somebody else. So, because that's not humor, that's just being a bully. So I see that in my book itself, is that my as I say, my 6-year-old, she has the book in her backpack, she takes it to first grade completely fine. There's nothing in there the teacher's like. My brother, who works at a stone quarry, so he's hanging out with a bunch of men's men, that eat lunch out of lunch boxes and sit on the side of a wall and drink their coffee from a thermos, and they sit there and wearing hard hats, and they said, yeah, break out that book your brother made, and he'll toss off some jokes and they'll laugh and they'll think it's funny. My mother, KS, is a minister, and she has this book at church. So if you ever get cold, just stand in a corner for a bit. They're usually 90 degrees. So these are all the jokes that are on there. For her birthday, I bought my wife new beads for her abacus. It's the little things that count. It's like, these are all some things that are completely safe and fun. it doesn't mean my mother gets all the jokes. There's some Star Wars jokes in there that just she does not get. But it's the point of it being is that the jokes in there are completely safe. So that's the second thing that makes this book. And the other thing too, KS, is that when you buy something for somebody as a gift, you are doing two things. One, you're either making a reflection of what you think that's important that the giftee will like, or the other thing, it reflects the giver thinking this is a value to me that I want to impart upon you. So those are the two types of gifts that the reflection on that. When it comes to giving a gift on joke books, again, another thing, like if you buy there's a joke book made by like NPR, National Public Radio. Here in the United States, we have a radio station called National Public Radio, which is it's a government subsidized that's supposed to be, educational stuff. If you go look at, there's NPR joke books, there's sections in that just make fun of the other political parties. So even in a book that you would presume would be like, it already is, there's a section that likes to make fun of somebody else. So when you buy a joke book, for instance, if you're looking at buying a joke book for somebody, you are imparting what you feel yourself is humorous, or what you feel the other person is humorous. And if there's a joke in there that is that basically demeans somebody else, you are in a way either telling that person you will find this funny, or in a way you're telling that person I find this funny. So that's why that's what I really love about my book, is that there is nothing in here that could be construed as anything, because as I say, I got kids and I got parents and I got friends that I want to make sure that are going to truly enjoy, anything in this book. The third thing about this book that's different is there is, I love old time radio, KS, like all the radio, like things from like the Charlie McCarthy or Jack Benny or, George Burns and Gracie Allen, some of the older stuff, Groucho Marx. Some of those jokes just disappeared. That's why I love listening to old time radio. I'll hear a joke on there. I'm like, that is hilarious. That joke hasn't been heard in 80 years. I'll listen to it. I'll write it down, because it's on radio. I'll write it down and try to remember how it was written. And then I'll tweak it a bit for more of a modern audience. I'll give you an example. The Charlie McCarthy joke, I tweaked it to actually be reflective of a good dad joke. And this is how I wrote it. I told my wife when I was in my 20s, I was unbelievably handsome. She responded, "You're right. I don't believe it." So that joke that I brought, so that I kind of like brushed it off and kind of like retweaked it a bit. The other cool thing about this, so that the fourth thing about this book is that about 5% of the jokes in here, as you mentioned, kind of like talked about earlier, about 5% of them I actually kind of invented on my own. I kind of like invented. And it's really cool when I see those out in the wild and then see them come back to me. I think that's amazing. I'll give you one joke example that was based off of a real life event. It was early 2020, it was late 2019. And I was bringing my daughter to school, and I live in Vermont. So it's a rural state, and it's rural enough that you see deer a lot, but it's rare enough to see a deer that you would actually kind of comment on, like, hey, I just saw a deer. So as I was dropping off my daughter to school, we saw a deer hop across the road. And I came back home and I told my wife, I said, you know what? I saw a deer on the way to school today. And she looked at me and she said, how do you know it was going to school? And I stopped and I go, that's really funny. So I tweaked it a bit, and you can actually find that joke now in the wild. And I'm proud to say that I actually invented that joke, and you can find it now. It shows, you'll find it once in a while popping up. I'm like, it's my gift to the internet. I gave them and there's a few of those that not all of them land. Like I just saw like a farm stand, and it said like carrots beat peas. And I said, well, those are some pretty mean carrots. But it was beets as in BEET, but it was, some of those jokes are just, they you throw them out there, they might not land, but that deer one, and it's funny because that one's almost an homage to the Groucho Marx joke of Groucho Marx says, this morning I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How I got in my pajamas, I'll never know. Like it was, so that idea about the the deer on the way to school almost is, it's kind of like an homage to that as I, as I look at it. But those are the kind of 4 things specifically that I'm pretty proud of about this book that makes it different and unique compared to other books as well. So
Yeah, and I was looking at the Kickstarter with all the images on there, and there was something about the images that I liked that I couldn't really put my finger on it. But then when you just showed me the book, like the actual physical book itself, I'm assuming you learned this as an illustrator, a children's illustrator that you studied to be. But not only the images in the corner, that's like it's not too distracting, but it still catches your eye, but also that the pages are colored. So for me as a writer writing on my computer, I changed the page color to be like a light green because the brightness from the white burns my eyes.
Right.
So
Yeah.
having them colored like that actually makes it easier for me to read. I don't know if it's like I said, I don't know if it's something you learned as a children's illustrator, but as an adult, this is easier for me to read the pages.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's a good point, because what I wanted to do is just really, there is something about if you decide, and I decided, you know what, I want to make this a color book. Once you decide you're going to have like a colored frame, color around the frame, then there's nothing stopping you. It's not going to be more expensive. It was when I first made my first graphic novel back in 2013, 10 years ago, it was prohibitively expensive to publish your own book in color. And now it's really not that more expensive to do a book in color than it is to have it in black and white. And so with that said, it made zero sense to not do it all in color. And like you said, when it's that white on there, that white background on there, it takes away from the background images in a way, because with the fact that as we say, like the images themselves are have that color background, it actually makes the words become a part of the picture instead of separate of the picture in a way too. Yeah. There is. Oh, go ahead.
No, but you go. Go ahead.
Okay. So, and the other thing too, and I'm really excited about this Kickstarter. So for all the listeners out there that are huge fans of the Solonerdbird podcast, that if you're listening to this now, be very that the Kickstarter is funded, so the book's coming out, so don't even worry about that. But I'm really excited about the fact that we're getting some stretch goals that we're touching on. The first one is if we get to $1,000. And the goal, like I said, my goal wasn't that high because I didn't have to pay artists. I didn't have to pay because I guess so. It's like that's usually what the big chunk of it is, like to pay off your artists. I'm going to add another 25 pages of jokes if we're able to get that first Kickstarter, goal. The second goal is it's going to be a deluxe Kickstarter on that, meaning a deluxe dadder jokes. And what that's going to entail is that one of the things I love, as I say, I got, I'm one of those people that always goes to college, and, so I'm sitting on like a couple 3 degrees already. And one of the things about it is that I love the idea of just doing the research on like the history of the dad joke. So if we get to 1,500, there's something that's going to be a deluxe dadder jokes book. And so what I'm doing on that KS is like, just doing the research on the history of the dad joke and what it means. And the more I've done the research and the more this is my working theory, is that if you the term dad joke actually was first said in publication and it was in the Gettysburg Gazette or something along those lines. And it was back in 1987. And it was an op-ed piece that said, give credit to the dad joke or something around those lines. And that was the first time it was actually utilized. And if you look at it from like a cultural reference, like the cultural history of the dad joke, mid mid to early 1980s, and then the 70s and the 60s, all that stuff, everything to do with either movies, TV shows, anything to do with anything, the role of the father figure was someone who was stern and wise. It was, you listen to, like I said, all these old time radio programs talk about, ask your father what coffee he likes because a happy father is a happy home. Like all these really, just really patriarchal, nonsense. It wasn't until around the mid to late 80s where there started to be cracks in it, where you were starting to see the earlier generations of Gen Xers were getting into their 20s at that point, into because basically they say 66 is the early times of where Gen X faded it from the baby boomers faded into the Gen X generation. So fast forward that by the time they're in their starting to get 20s, that was in 86, 87. So I truly don't believe there's any coincidence on that, because you're looking at the third generation past the greatest generation, which was the World War II generation, gave birth to the baby boomers. And then the baby boomers gave birth to the Gen Xers. And so what happened is that the baby boomers still had this cultural ideology that this is what a father's supposed to be. This is what a nuclear family is supposed to look like. And my father, it wasn't until we learned later that he owned a train set, but he never brought it out. He was almost ashamed of the fact he kept his train set. And it wasn't until you're starting to see these later baby boomers to earlier Gen Xers where you're starting to see them to be kind of they're not overly ashamed of collecting Matchbox cars. I know a friend of mine who's 62 who actually is, it's like, oh yeah, I collect Matchbox cars, but he wasn't bragging about it when he was younger. But it's the point where he feels a little bit more comfortable about it, because we've kind of had the societal aspect where back in 87, 88, think about what was on in the television shows pre 87. It was you had shows where the John Hughes movies, the dad never had a personality. The dad was just the dad that, thanks honey, drinks his coffee, grabs his briefcase and runs out to work. There was never any like central figure of a dad being funny, or if he was funny, he was like eccentric. He wasn't like goofy for the sake for his kids. So it kind of started with the Cosby Show, with Bill Cosby as Cliff Huxtable, and then away Danny Tanner a bit with Full House, where Danny Tanner wasn't goofy for the sake of being goofy. He loved to have things clean, but people laughed at him, not laughed with him. He wasn't goofy to his kids. That's where you could have Joey and Uncle Jesse do that as part of that. And still, like with the Cosby Show, you still had the role of the father. He started to be a little goofy, but he was still always the one that imparted wisdom and you start to see some of those roles started to blend a bit with the mother figure a bit. It wasn't until you really started hitting home with also Family Matters. At the beginning, the father was the father, but towards season 7 and 8, he was, it's the writers gave him permission to be goofy. And then you saw Home Improvement, where, all right, the dad's goofy. The dad is goofy now. As soon as that happened, if you start noticing, it gave permission to start. First, it made a little cracks, and then it blew open the idea of what a nuclear family should be. Like, it blew open the idea of the father has to always be serious. It gave permission for the father to not have to be serious anymore. And it gave us that permission. And this is my working theory, KS. As soon as that started happening, when I was a kid, I saw guys in their 40s go in a comic book shop, and I was 13. They got their comic books. They put them in a paper bag like it was something bad, like a brown paper bag that didn't want to be seen holding comic books. But now there's something about the ideas, like it's okay to disrupt the idea of doing things that doing things that are actually, okay with the fact now you're starting to see people being proud, people are proud playing Dungeons and Dragons. People are proud to read comic books. People are okay to play video games. It's because I really feel that kind of started with the idea of the cracks of starting to disrupt the idea of what the nuclear family is and allowing the dad to have a personality. Dads were not allowed to have a personality in the early 80s and in the 70s. So you did not have a person. You're supposed to be serious. And once you're able to actually do that, and I love this as a father myself, is that I love the idea of like the gift that I can give to my children now is the idea that it's okay to laugh at yourself. It's okay to bring humor to the world. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be embarrassed. It's okay to be vulnerable in a way. When you actually create humor and stuff, there is a level of vulnerability and you're doing that. And being able to really to now in 2023, the idea of the generic dad just doesn't exist anymore. It literally just doesn't exist anymore. It's like you can't find that stereotypical dad anymore. And that's what I believe when you look at where we are culturally now, if you look at the trunk of it, how it all started, where the idea of even what a blended family, what a family is and what a family should look like, I really see that it started with the fact that dads were able to be goofy in the late 80s and then early 90s and it started from there, because then you were allowed to say there's no such thing as a generic father or a generic mother or a generic aunt or a generic uncle. There's no such thing as that anymore. But the foundation to what people thought was the structure of a home was a father, busted that open, because there's no way I could ever act like a dad from the early 80s or the stuff. That's just not me. And a lot of that has to deal with the fact that as generations progress, as cultural expectations progress, that's the thing, Chaos. I really believe there's something to be said about the heritage and the birth of calling those one-liners and those puns. Because here's the thing too, there's a little bit of semblance of the idea of having the wise father figure the way by doing the dad jokes, because there is an expectation of wit and play on words that you're not going to find that seem to kind of carry that over with that idea of the observational wit that isn't about, hey, come down, sit next to me, Junior. I saw that you have a black eye. What happened? Oh, like it's this idea of like you can tell a story and you can kind of say something with some of those witty one-liners that are in essence what we would consider dad jokes now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's just shift a little bit to your collaborators, just so we can give them credit. So how was the process of collaborating with the other creators on this series, and even from the first one to this one now, and how did you know they were the right people to work with?
It's a good question. So, as we mentioned at the top of the show, like I have my own podcast and I am on, I just put in the can episode 300. So I'm pretty excited about that. And
congratulations.
And so what I did is that I looked at the style of what I did. And so everybody talks about, so everybody, like the good news is that what I was able to do is have folks that have similar art styles or something I know that could fit in that. So I reached out to 3 of my previous guests that I've always kind of appreciated their artwork. The first one is Bryan Ballinger, and he's a published children's book author, and he's a muralist as well. He's been on national news with some of the murals he's painted on sides of parking lots and in libraries and stuff like that. And he also has a literary agent that helps him with the books that children's books that he comes out. So I asked him if he wanted to do a cover for me, because as Kickstarters go, it's always good to have exclusive covers. So you got to have something like that. The second person was Dirk Stanley, who is a prolific artist and also role-playing game designer. He's made over 30 role-playing games that he's actually designed and illustrated himself, full color. It's called Faraway Land is the world that he created, which is for anybody out there that's listening that loves role-playing games, go to Drive Through RPG and check out Dirk Stanley's work. He's and check out Faraway Land. It is it's a great world he created. It's so fun. And then I have Mark Gonyea, who is also a children's book author and creator who also has a literary agent. And he also has done artwork for Kevin Smith's comic books. So he's done stuff for like Image and Dark Horse. And he also is great. And his artwork is very much graphic design focused. So if you look at his covers look like the covers you would expect for dad and dadder jokes that you would find in a bookstore. Like his stuff looks like it looks like bookstore quality. Like Dirk, Stanley, and Bryan Ballinger did a version of my cover, which was really fun to watch that. And so I had them come in. So that's something too, is I actually have the exclusive. I also, and so it was really fun. So I reached out to them and say, hey, are you willing to help me out? Do you want to do that? And they're like, of course. So of course, as an artist, you pay your artists. So I made sure I paid them up front. So, and so they're all paid, and I love the work. So that's what I'll also do too with we do the dad or joke, deluxe book. I'll probably add in those covers to it as a, as part of the thicker book of it too. So,
what is some advice that you would offer to other creators you wish someone would have told you when you first started? So it can be back when you were in school and then trying to find a job, working what you studied for. It can be, still trying to maintain that creative passion while working with the Peace Corps. It can be, or just like when you started doing your own graphic novels and then working on other projects, whatever it may be, just like you wish someone would have told you when you first started.
So there's two pieces of advice that I was told because this is a good question, KS, and I like to hear what guests say. So I'm going to recycle two things that two of my guests said that I actually love what they did. The first one is one person who has kind of like an adult ADD situation where she just easily gets distracted. So what she noticed that what she would do is that she would set also three pieces of advice. The first one, and it's the two of them are for writers and one is for artists. So the first one for just the two for writers is if you get easily distracted, this is what she does. She sets a timer for an odd number to work on, because she said if she sets a timer for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, her mind gets distracted by thinking, do I have 10 minutes left, or am I halfway through? So she's always thinking about how much time instead of actually getting distracted what she's doing and she's writing. So she'll set a timer for 37 minutes. She can't. So that's out of place, out of mind. She doesn't even have to worry about thinking about how much time she has left, because now she's not distracted by dividing the time she split up in half. Or she's dividing it by, because she sets the timer for an odd number. And that's and I started doing that. That's a great idea. I love that. The other idea for a writer that which is really good is one writer said that stop writing when you know what's going to happen next. Never stop writing when you don't know what's happening next. Sit down and keep writing until you know what's going to happen. Then when you know what's going to happen next, take a break for the day, because it's easier for you to jump back into it the next day because you know what's happening next. So that was a great piece of advice, is never, ever stop writing when you have writer's block, or because that's how writer's block kind of happens. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen next. So when you're in it, when you're writing and you know what's happening next, you're ready to know what's going to happen for the next chapter, start writing the next chapter, write the first few sentences and you know what's happening, then stop. Never stop when you don't know what's happening next, because that's hard to get going again. And the piece of advice that I heard from an artist friend that actually works at the Charles Schulz Museum, who does a lot of graphic design and art for his day job. And I asked him, I said, how do you have time? Because usually if you do a job that's creative, if you're in the creative field, if you're an artist or writer and you're working in the creative fields, whether you're doing something that involves that creativity, then never expect to come home at the end of the day and have your own you time to start working. So what he said is that they own my creativity for 8 hours a day. That's it. And I give them my dregs. I don't give them my good stuff. When I wake up in the morning, that's when I create. In the morning before I go to work is when I do all my stuff, because I'm fresh. I'm fresh and I'm ready to do it. And that's when I'm starting to type or draw or any of that kind of stuff that he's doing. He does it in the morning before he goes to work. And I thought that's a great piece of advice, is that, and if people say, well, I'm not a morning person, you know what? But if you work in the morning, wake up earlier, because you know what? Every single person I've ever met never has full of energy when they come back from 8 hours of work. I've never met someone like, I'm all energetic. I just worked for 8 hours. I'm ready to go for another 4. Like, no one, I've never, ever met somebody who's that. So that was another great piece of advice that I felt was pretty valuable. So those KS would be probably my 3 pieces of advice I would recommend is, if you get easily distracted, always set a timer for an odd number. The second thing is only stop writing when you know what's happening next. And the third piece is, if you're working in the creative arts, then the morning belongs to you. It is not fair that you give your creativity over to a grind that doesn't pay you enough. So that creativity belongs to you, and you need to use that first, because it doesn't exist at the end of the day. So
yeah. I mean, this is all really great advice. I've never heard of that before. Like 37 minutes is really odd. I thought you could say like 17 minutes or something. Like 37 minutes is really odd, but then when you think about it, when I set timers for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 2 hours, I'm already dividing up my time.
Yeah.
You know, in within that time limit. And then so yeah, that does make sense. And then the writing, I never thought about doing that, because like you said, with the writer's block, you know what's gonna happen and you stop when you don't know what's gonna happen.
Right.
And that's when you get writer's block. And so I never thought about that. And then it makes sense to do what you want to do first thing in the morning, because it is when you're fresh. I mean, a lot of our ideas, or when we're like brushing our teeth in the morning, or taking a shower in the morning, or whatever it may be, or even like going to work in traffic and sitting in a car, we'll start having ideas, so, if you can wake up and go to the gym first thing in the morning, you can jot some stuff down for like 30 minutes really quickly before you go to work. Right. And because it's like, I remember when I wrote my first book, I would work 8 hours, and then I would like force myself to do another 6 to finish the book. And it's just like, maybe if I did wake up earlier and maybe do like, 30 minutes before I went to work, it would have been a lot easier for me. Possibly, I'm not really sure. But yeah, that is some really great advice, stuff I've never really heard of before.
Yeah, I love those pieces. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But outside of working on data jokes or whatever projects or podcast people you may be interviewing, how well do you find balance for your life? And how do you typically manage your mental well-being when you become stressed, frustrated, or overwhelmed?
So the piece of it is not to get to that point, because there's this thing that, and I felt this, as I mentioned earlier in the show, is that I worked for Peace Corps and Doctors Without Borders. And I remember when I was in the Philippines, I was sitting in traffic, and all of a sudden I just felt really dizzy, and I just had tunnel vision. And it wasn't until I realized later I was actually suffering from an anxiety attack. And it came from the idea of, and I learned this term from Doctors Without Borders, it's called accumulated stress disorder. It's not PTSD where some tragic event happens, and and you see accumulated stress disorder a lot in nurses and in teachers. And what that is accumulated stress disorders, little pieces of things are just going to pick at you for months on end or for years, to the point where you actually end up having an anxiety attack. And or you get burnt out. And that's what burnout is basically accumulative stress disorder. So you either have that fight or flight mentality. So the fight is the anxiety attack. The flight is just bringing yourself away from things. And that's where you see that a lot in nurses and doctors. And so from then on, and I took like 3 months off. I'm like, I need to, and because I just wasn't in the right headspace. And a lot of it was when you're working in emergency relief work, there's no break. You don't have the weekends, because first of all, you're living out of a suitcase into a completely different country that doesn't speak the same language as you. And you're there to fix a problem 7 days a week. And then you take 2 weeks off and then fly to a different country and do the same thing for 3 months. So it was, and I didn't realize, because I was in my 20s, I was just full of adrenaline, and I loved it. But and I noticed every 6 months or so, when I finished a mission and I was flying back, I always got sick. Always got really sick. And what it is like, you're coming off of that high of adrenaline for 6 months. And then you're just completely vulnerable to germs and things. And I got wicked sick all the time after every 6 months. And so based off of that is like, so one of the things that I learned is that it was when I was working overseas, they said, all right, every 3 months, you have to take a vacation. You have to take every 3 months, you have to take a week off. They make you fly away and go to another place. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm fine. I feel like good. I keep going, because here's the thing. I compared myself to my father, who never took a vacation for 20 years. I'm like, I don't need to take a vacation. My father never took a vacation. Then I realized that working for the town, working on the roads for the town that you live in, where you get to go home at the end of the day and see all your familiar things, you have a much more stronger anchor to be able to be to be able to ground yourself when you're in your own town, than it is that you fly to a different country every few weeks or every few months and just and you see death and destruction wherever you go, because that's what you do, is bring the infrastructure back to where it was before and then leave again. So, fix the wells or fix this or do that and then leave. And so it was an unfair comparison to expect that the psychological impact of doing overseas emergency relief work is the same thing as fixing potholes in your hometown. So that was that one thing that I noticed. Yeah. And so that's when I really, noticed that you have to take time for yourself. You have to. It's the same thing with the old analogy is like, if there's plane troubles, you put the mask on yourself first before you put it on your child. It's like, take care of yourself first before you can take care of other people. So working relief work, and then also working in, for the past 8 years as well, 8 to 10 years has been where I have, my previous careers, I was working in, I was doing advocacy work, community advocacy work for people living with intellectual disabilities. So I did that for 10 years. And so, in my position in leadership there, I was very clear that you need to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. And so the idea of, and this is a lot to say to the fact that you see all the time, the two, as I mentioned earlier, the two things you see a lot of accumulated stress disorder is teachers and nurses. And what is the common term that we call teachers and nurses? We call them heroes. We call them angels. We call them these things. And the reason why we call them, because it gives us societal permission to pay them less and work them harder, because we do not value their time and we do not value their finances. So let's just call them heroes. You know what? No, you know what you need to do? You need to allow nurses and teachers to take vacations. You need to support them and you need to pay them enough money to make them survive. And that's what it comes down to as well. So to answer your question, you love how I just go off on these like tangents, KS?
No, go for
So,
it.
so what it is so basically because of that is I made it very clear to myself is that I've in KS, we live in the same podcasting world, and we've been doing it long enough to know that we've seen some hosts, some podcast shows show up, then disappear 6 months later. And what happens is that somebody feels as though they're in a race and not a marathon, where they will do 5 or 6 shows a week. And I say, don't do that. No, you're going to burn out. And that's what it comes down to. It's like, so I'm very clear that I'll do at most 2 shows a week. And I've concentrated them all in 1 day a week. And then I'll just record them all 1 day a week. And then I will edit them as it goes, and then making sure that they're ready to go. But it's also to make sure that you continue to do what you love. And if you love pizza, but you eat pizza for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, you're not going to want pizza after doing that for a week. You're never going to want to see pizza again. So if you love doing podcasting, if you love doing art, and if you love writing, then you got to ask yourself is like, you have to either be a pro-am at it or make it a hobby. So it's, or if you jump into it and know that you want to actually do this as a living, it's writing is the equivalent of wanting to, it's like, it would be the equivalent of saying, I want to be a basketball star. Great. There is very few people who can make a living playing basketball. If you want to make a living of being an author or an artist or any of that stuff, then you got to realize that a big chunk of your work is going to be writing for somebody else or doing art for somebody else. If you want to do your own stuff, then that's what I said earlier, that idea is that then you do your stuff in the morning when you're actually at your height. And then you can then write print copy or be a journalist or be a graphic designer for a day job, because you can get paid to write. You can get paid to do art. But if you want to make your own art or write your own books, do that in the morning. They pay you. It is a contractual basis where they pay you money for you to do the work for them, and make sure your best work is the stuff that you're doing for yourself. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why it kind of makes sense for me to, I always feel better to do my stuff in the morning, like I said before. So,
yeah.
But is there anything else that you want to touch on about the Dad Jokes Kickstarter that we may have missed? Maybe discuss rewards for potential backers, because I know you said, I mean, it's funded already, and then
right.
If you guys reach your stretch goals, you'll do add more pages and whatnot. But like, what would they get as rewards?
So I can so yes, thank you for that, KS. So first and foremost is like, you always got to have like your PDF, like your ebook tier. So that's the first one, is that you can get for $5, you can get, over 500 jokes. You can have that available right there. You can get, then if you wanted to get I also have the PDF available for $10. You can get the PDF version of Dad Jokes, the first book, and Dadder Jokes available as well. And that's 1,000 jokes for $10. Like, you can't, I mean, that's like a penny a joke. You can't, there's no way you can beat that deal. There's also, plus being said, that it's completely safe for anyone to read. And plus there's some jokes in there that you're not going to find anywhere else. You can also get the physical copy. You can also get the physical copy for $15 for the Dadder Jokes. This is going to be cheap. You can buy it online after the fact, but it'll be more expensive because it is a fully colored book, and you can get it on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com. You can get it there, but it will be more expensive. But yeah, so this is why I really want to make sure I can support the folks that are there. And as I mentioned, there are some variant covers that are exclusive to the Kickstarter. You have as I say, the Bryan Ballinger variant cover. You have the Mark Gonyea variant cover. Then for $30, you can get both books. You can get the dad and dadder jokes, and that's 260 plus pages of full colored books. And plus, and this is the other beautiful thing about this, KS. And your name will be in the credits too at the back of dadder jokes for that thank you tier. I love also the add-ons. The add-on pages on there is the ability to where is the so your add-ons is that, as I mentioned too, is that you can get for $2. I've made these beautiful bookmarks, and so you can get 16 PDF bookmarks that actually, if you look at them from a distance, you think they might be Bible verses because it's in cursive and there's like a tree behind it and stuff. And there's beautiful ones, and the one with cats. So people might think, oh, what's sweet, but they're actually dad jokes in there that actually reminiscent of the actual like what's in the background. So things about cats on there. There'll be a cat, like, what do you call a pile of cats? A meowtant. Like there's some of those on there. There's and also too, what I did is, like, I have also the story comic, as I mentioned earlier, the 3 books, graphic novels that I produced earlier, I put in a bundle. So for anybody that loves independent comics, or just loves who just loves some pretty good non-superhero-ish slice of life kind of graphic novels, you can get that people are mad at me for making it this cheap. The KS is like, for $5 you can get over 630 pages of graphic novels, and you can also get the PDF version of Dad Jokes, the earlier one. I also have on here as I say, then you can get, for $8 you can get the physical bookmarks, 16 bookmarks as well, that will actually be printed out in good bookmark stock. We also have so a couple variant covers as well. We also have the story comic library bundle, which is for all, so 3 physical books right here. I can so for those that are listening, I am showing to KS all 3 books. So for 630 pages for $15, you can get all of these for $15. They retail also. You could these that sell online, each one is about $15 each. So you're saving $30 if you wanted to buy all of those.
Yeah.
So yeah, and even the debt, you can get the whole series. You can get all of them. See, so those are some of the add-ons that I have on there. And I did get yelled at earlier today for not putting in a retail bundle. So I'm gonna add the retail. I'll put a retail bundle in for that as well. So the retailer bundle, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, that's some of the fun stuff that I was able to do. But the beautiful thing of what we do, KS, is that we meet such great people in the work we do of doing podcasts. Mm-hmm. And I've been just so darn excited to see all the support on this. And as I mentioned too, we are funded. So the book is being made. The good news is that, we get some of those if we push through. For all you KS Garner fans out there, make sure that so you listen to this, support the project. Plus, here's the thing, and this is the one guarantee. There's not a lot of guarantees in the world, but here's the guarantee: if you buy this and you gift this to somebody, you will win gift giving. There is no way anybody is going to be upset that you bought them this joke book, because it is full of wholesome goodness that also makes you like, that was actually pretty good. So like what is it? What's a good one here? That's some of these jokes you just can't that you can read it. They're funny because it's the way you actually how it's written because it's a play on words, but some of them you have to, that's okay to like read it out loud. Like I used to crastinate, but I decided to, but I got so good I went pro. They procrastinate.
Yeah, procrastinate.
I went to the paint store to get thinner. It didn't work. See, today is International Waffle Day. I can't decide if I want to participate. So there you go. See, these are gems. See, KS, these are gems right here. Right. Yeah. But yeah.
So, Barney, where can people find you online? And do you have any other projects coming up or anything else that you wanted to plug in?
So I have so you can find me at storycomic.com. Really surprised that domain name was never taken. So, because it was a play on graphic novel. So I did story comic. And surprising that wasn't taken. So storycomic.com. I am on Blue Sky. I am on Threads. I am on Instagram. I am Facebook. And I have been having a fantastic time. Just collecting, connecting with everybody. I am also so I am working on, as I say, once the Dadder Jokes books, every day, KS, there's a new joke that I either curate, come up with, or I have a list that I have in the in the can that I'm waiting. Every day I have a new one popping up. I do, as I say, I'm working on my episode 300 is coming out next week. Here's the cool thing, KS. Okay. It's like, every 100 episodes, I interview another Barney Smith on my podcast. So I had, episode 100. So if you ever Google the name Barney Smith, there's always this one that shows up. Barney Smith, who actually painted, was an artist. He did art on top of toilet seats. So he was a toilet seat artist. And wow. He actually has an entire, he died back in 2018 at I think it was 96 years old. And he actually, before he died, he wanted to make sure that all 1,400 toilet seats paintings that he did went to a place. So somebody eventually ended up buying it for him and actually creating it somewhere in Texas. They actually created a huge museum with the pillars were actually made of toilet seats. So it's this huge museum that's dedicated just to all of his 1,400 plus toilet seat art. So he passed away before we actually could get to episode 100, but I had on my show episode 100, the curators of his museum was on. Then episode 200, I actually had a musician journalist from Australia named Barney Smith came on the show and talked about some of his music and talked about some of his photography. And then that's going to be coming out next week or the week after. I have another Barney Smith who, KS, is he's like a world famous Grammy nominated musical conductor, classical musician conductor and art director. And he's the founder of an a cappella group called Voces 8. That's VOCES 8. And if you look up Voces 8 on Spotify, it has about 25,000 monthly listeners and over 250,000 downloads. And he is, it was one of those guys where I'm thinking he's going to ignore this email. And I said, hey, I was like, hi, my name is Barney Smith and your name is Barney Smith. And I do a podcast, and every 100 episodes I interview another Barney Smith. It's okay if you say no. Like, it was just like, I know, like, there's no way this guy's going to say yes. And then like a day later, he's like, I'd love to be on your podcast. I'm like, that's so awesome. I'm like, oh, I of course you can come. Like, I wanted no one to like, I want to try to be cool about it. But yeah, it was so exciting. So I actually that's recorded. So I'm excited to share that episode 300 of interviewing another Barney Smith. And it's, yeah, so, that, working on that. And of course I always have projects. I'm one of those people that actually has like 3 projects going on at once at the same time that happen. And I really wanted to cut my teeth on doing a my dadder joke books as through Kickstarter, because as soon as you jump in the water, it makes it easier to keep doing it. So so I'm excited to start launching. I got a few Kickstarter ideas projects that I've been working on as of recent now too. Some are in different levels and here's the thing. The best thing about this, KS, is that Kickstarter has now evolved from being a place where you actually try to raise more money to finish your project. It's now turned into basically a pre-order system. Mm-hmm. So, because it's expected that if people give money to Kickstarters, there is an expectation that the work is done, and then now the Kickstarter is funded, and now within the next month or so, you'll be able to, get your product or so. Mm-hmm. But 5 years ago, it was literally used to kickstart projects. That's exactly what the term is. But now you have a lot of these businesses that make $1 million a year, particularly board game businesses, now just use it as a pre-order, and that's kind of evolved into a lot of independent creators now too. So, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, right. I told you it would be. I would have things to say. So I wanted to make sure that I try to keep up with you. So yeah.
Yeah, you had a lot to say. It was really, it was very informative, especially with the dad jokes, the historical context of stuff, if you want to if you really want to know the history of things, you kind of have to look at even the historical context of it, especially through media. I think that's the easiest way to get it, especially with shows that you mentioned, like Roseanne, Home Improvement, all those shows. I was thinking more of the uncles, where you had the father who was more stern and wise, but then you had the uncle who was the funnier one, especially with Full House, so
right. Yeah.
And yeah, it's like I said, it was really informative. I mean, it has nothing to do with your work, but I really thought it was interesting that, you met your wife and you married her after 30 days. Yeah. I was like, how do you meet somebody and marry them after 30 days? I need some help.
Yeah. You know what? I think what it is for me, I just had to get out of my way and just really kind of look at it from an art perspective. What's my arc? What's my story arc on this? How, and it's one of those things where if you know, and that's really what it came down to, is that it's, and it's really where some of the best decisions I ever made were the ones I made off suddenly, mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do it. It was one of those things where it's just if you get too distracted with your thoughts instead of actually going with your gut, then you end up doing it. And that's the thing too. I would just, so we've been married for 11 years now, and it's still, sometimes I'll just ask her, it's what, are you nuts? Why would you didn't know me? It's one of those things, just and she's like, well, you didn't know me either. I'm like, yeah, I know, but but I really tried to, I was really trying to impress her, and I was, yeah. But yeah, it was, it is, 30 days we dated for 30 days. And, yeah, and that's what it comes down to, KS, when and, it's just it's not all the idea of just never second guessing yourself. It's you could easily second guess yourself. And it's it's the same thing of, it's if you're dating somebody for the first 30 days, and unless there's something that's something's not right, or let me meet your parents, these things, I made sure. And also, because I met in Nigeria, and I got grilled big time by her mom and her uncle and her cousins and her brother and all these. So it wasn't just it was just her and I together going on dates. It was a lot of questions, and it was a lot of digging, and it was a lot of, you're coming to church with us, that kind of stuff. And and then getting all the ministers and all the, so it was, and that's the thing about when you marry a Nigerian, you marry the whole family. So here I am too, is like her mother lives with us, which I love because I knew that's the thing too, is I knew as soon as we got married, it was her mom was moving in with us because that's what happens. So yeah, it's amazing, and um I kick myself I pinch myself every day about just full of the gratitude. And that's the thing too, just making sure you're full of humor and gratitude. It just keeps it fresh. But yeah, 30 days KS. See, look at that. Yeah.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank writer, creator, and fellow podcaster Barney Smith for joining us here today to promote the second installment of his dad joke series, Dadder Jokes, now live on Kickstarter. All of Barney's socials and website will be listed in this episode's details alongside the Kickstarter link for those who are interested. Again, I'm KS Garner, and you've been listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Thank you.